On the third day in Bangkok, I signed a 12-month lease on a one-bedroom apartment in Thonglor at 38,000 baht a month. I want to give you the precise circumstances of that decision, because the precision is what makes it instructive rather than merely embarrassing. Let me give you those 72 hours, because the 72 hours are where the story is. I arrived on a Tuesday evening, cleared customs, took the airport rail link, checked into a hotel in the Asoke area that I had chosen because it was centrally located for my initial exploration, and slept well because I had planned the time zone adjustment correctly with melatonin and a strategic nap schedule that I had developed from research on circadian rhythm management, which worked, and which I mention because it is the same quality of careful planning that went into the neighborhood research, and I want you to hold both things simultaneously. On Wednesday I walked from the hotel toward Thonglor, because the map and the research said Thonglor was where I was going to live, and I wanted to verify the research with my own eyes. I walked for about 4 hours. Thonglor was beautiful, as advertised. The streets were clean, the restaurants were numerous and varied, the BTS station was present and operational, the residents were well-dressed and purposeful, and I felt, walking its streets, the specific confirmation bias that I have since identified as the most dangerous cognitive state available to a person who has done research. The feeling that what you see matches what you expected to see, which feels like validation, but is actually just recognition. I was recognizing the place from the videos. I was not learning anything new about it. On Thursday morning, I called the number on the listing I had identified online. The agent showed me the apartment, and I signed the lease by 3 in the afternoon. 72 hours. On the third day in Bangkok, I signed a 12-month lease. I had done, in the 6 months preceding the move, what I would characterize as thorough research. I had watched 47 YouTube videos about living in Bangkok. I had read 3 expat blogs that I considered reliable because they used specific neighborhood names rather than generalities. I had joined 2 Facebook groups and read approximately 300 posts, and I had downloaded and annotated a Bangkok district map with color-coded zones indicating what each area was allegedly suited for. I had highlighted Thonglor in yellow, which in my annotation system meant desirable, based on the consensus of the 47 videos, which agreed that Thonglor was where the quality apartments, the good restaurants, and the manageable expat community were concentrated. I arrived at Suvarnabhumi on a Tuesday. By Thursday afternoon, I had signed the lease. My name is David. I am 63 years old. I moved to Bangkok in November 2022, after 31 years of writing software at a company in Seattle that I am not going to name, and I want to tell you what Thonglor taught me in 12 months, which is approximately 82,000 baht more than it needed to teach me. Before I tell you about Thonglor, I need to tell you about the research methodology, because the methodology is the protagonist of this story, and the methodology was excellent on its own terms and catastrophically wrong in its application. I should give you the 31 years in Seattle first, because the 31 years produced the man who arrived at Suvarnabhumi with the 47 videos and the annotated map, and that man is the one who needs examining. I spent my career writing distributed systems, the kind of software that runs in the background of things you use without knowing they need software. Inventory management and logistics routing and the infrastructure that makes it possible for a package to know where it is at every point in its journey. This work requires precision in the specification of what the system must do, precision in the implementation of the specification, and precision in the testing that confirms the implementation matches the specification. Imprecision at any stage produces failures that are difficult to trace and expensive to correct. And across 31 years, I developed a professional intolerance for imprecision that I am told was sometimes difficult to be around, and that I am going to confirm was probably difficult to be around, because the intolerance was not confined to the professional context. I applied it to restaurant selection, to car maintenance, to the allocation of my retirement portfolio, and to the selection of a neighborhood in Bangkok, and it worked for 3 of those 4 things. And the 4th is why I am telling this story. What the software career also produced was a specific relationship with research, which is that I trust research I have done and distrust research I have not done. This is a sound epistemological position for a person building distributed systems. It is a less sound position for a person making decisions that are fundamentally about subjective experience, because subjective experience is not a thing that yields to research in the same way that a systems requirement does. A systems requirement is true or false. A neighborhood is not true or false. A neighborhood is the experience of a specific person at a specific time of day, with specific needs and a specific pace. And the research available on a neighborhood, the videos, the blogs, the forum posts, are the experiences of other specific people at other specific times, with different needs and different paces, and the overlap between their experience and yours is not 0, but it is not 1 either, and I did not model the overlap correctly. I modeled it as approximately 1. This is a precision-focused person's mistake, and it is the most expensive mistake I have made since I once specified an API endpoint in the wrong data format and spent 3 weeks tracing the resulting cascading failures through 4 services. Thonglor was the wrong data format. Before I tell you about Thonglor, I need to tell you about the research methodology, because software is a thing that fails when information is absent and succeeds when information is correctly structured. I applied information gathering to the Bangkok decision the way I would apply it to an architectural decision in a code base. I identified the decision I needed to make, where to live. I identified the information I needed to make it, neighborhood characteristics, transport, cost, community. I gathered that information systematically, 47 videos, 3 blogs, 2 Facebook groups, 1 annotated map, and I produced a ranked output, Thonglor, highlighted in yellow. This process is correct. The output it produced was wrong, and the reason the output was wrong is the reason every software project that has been correctly specified and correctly implemented can still produce the wrong result, which is that the inputs were not correct. 47 YouTube videos about Bangkok neighborhoods are 47 data points about how Bangkok appears to people who are visiting Bangkok or who moved to Bangkok recently. They are not data points about how Bangkok feels to live in. They are not data points about what you specifically will need from a neighborhood at 63. They are not data points about where you will actually go, what you will actually do, who you will actually be when you are not performing the discovery of Bangkok for a YouTube camera. I gathered data about how other people experienced Bangkok and I used it to decide where I would experience Bangkok. And the mismatch between those two things is the 12-month lease. Let me explain Thonglor, because Thonglor deserves its own description rather than the one available in the 47 videos, which is approximately this. Thonglor is where young, fashionable Bangkok goes to eat and be seen, with excellent restaurant density, good coffee, boutique retail, a nightlife that begins around 10, and a transport spine on Sukhumvit line that will take you anywhere you need to go. This is accurate. It is also the description of a neighborhood that is correctly sized for a 35-year-old Bangkok professional and sized incorrectly for a 63-year-old retired software engineer from Seattle who goes to bed at 10:30. The restaurants were indeed excellent. I ate at perhaps 8 of them in the first month exploring. After the first month, I had established my rotation, 3 places near the apartment where I was known and where I did not need to manage the experience of being a foreigner at a new restaurant. And these 3 places are not in any of the 47 videos because they are not photogenic. The coffee was excellent. The retail was of no particular interest to me because I stopped accumulating objects approximately a decade ago. The nightlife was irrelevant. The community, the young, fashionable Bangkok professional community, was not my community, not because I had anything against it, but because a retired software engineer from Seattle does not naturally intersect with 29-year-old Thai food influencers, which is the specific community that Thonglor was generating when I arrived, and which was generating interesting content and not producing friendships for me. What I needed, which I did not know I needed until I was in Thonglor not needing Thonglor, was Ekkamai. I want to say something about what I actually use Bangkok for, because the research was structured around the wrong question, and the right question would have started with this. I use Bangkok for three things, primarily. I use it for the food infrastructure, not the restaurant scene in the way the videos describe the restaurant scene, but the daily reality that there is excellent, fresh, inexpensive food available at every scale, from street market to sit-down restaurant within walking distance of anywhere in the city, and that the maintenance of my physical health in Bangkok is both easier and cheaper than it was in Seattle. I use it for the connectivity. The city is extremely well connected internationally, which matters for a person with a family in Seattle and a remote professional network, and the internet speed in Ekkamai is sufficient for distributed systems work when I choose to do it, which is occasionally. And I use it for the pace and the light, which is the category that the research cannot access and that I did not know to research. Bangkok at 63, for a person who is no longer building a career and who has the time to inhabit his days rather than process them, has a quality of available time that Seattle did not have at any age I can remember. And the light is different here, and the canal is green in the morning, and I sit with a coffee, and I look at the canal, and I am not doing anything in particular, and the not doing anything in particular is the specific thing I came here for, and that took me 2 addresses and 14 months to find. What I needed, which I did not know I needed until I was in Thonglor not needing Thonglor, was Ekkamai. Ekkamai is the next stop on the BTS after Thonglor, approximately 8 minutes by foot or 2 minutes by taxi or 7 minutes walking, depending on which part of each neighborhood you are comparing. Ekkamai is where the slightly older Bangkok settles, not old in the retirement sense, but the 40 to 55 expat community, the people who have been here for 3 to 10 years, who have established their rhythms, who go to the same coffee places at the same times, and who will talk to a new person because the community is small enough that a new person is noticeable, and Ekkamai people have learned that new people who show up are usually interesting. The rent in Ekkamai, for an equivalent apartment to the one I signed in Thonglor, is approximately 22 to 26,000 baht a month. I was paying 38. The difference, 12 to 16,000 baht a month, over 12 months, is between 144 and 192,000 baht. I am going to use the midpoint, 168,000 baht, approximately 4,500 US dollars, which I spent to live in the place I had selected with yellow highlighter, rather than the place that would have been correct. I discovered Ekkamai in month 2. This is the specific comedy of this situation, which is not the comedy of a man who never finds what he needs, but the comedy of a man who finds what he needs very quickly after signing a binding agreement to live somewhere else. I want to tell you what would have happened if I had done the research correctly, because the correct research was available and I did not do it. The correct research would have involved identifying people who were similar to me in age, background, and professional history, and who had moved to Bangkok and lived there for more than 2 years. Asking them where they lived and why, and weighting their responses more heavily than the YouTube consensus. This research would have taken approximately 3 emails to the Facebook groups I had joined, because both groups have members who would have responded directly and accurately to a message that said, "I am 63, retired tech, not looking for nightlife or young expat community, looking for a neighborhood with settled residents and manageable pace. Where should I look?" The answers would have included Ekkamai. The answers might have included Ari, which is north of the center and has a similar character. They would not have included Thonglor as the primary recommendation for a 63-year-old retiree, because people who have been here know that Thonglor is for a different life than the one I was building. I did not ask the question. I asked the YouTube algorithm, which gave me the most popular answer rather than the most relevant one. And the most popular answer and the most relevant answer are, in the space of Bangkok neighborhood selection for a retired software engineer, separated by about 8 minutes of BTS travel and 14,000 baht per month. I discovered Ekkamai in month 2. Thai, perhaps 50, clearly a resident of some standing, asked me in the second month whether I was new, and I said yes, and she asked what I thought of the area, and I said I was still finding my feet, and she asked where I had come from, And I said, Seattle. And she said, Ah, do you know Ekkamai? And I said, No. And she said, You should go look at Ekkamai. You might be more comfortable there. I asked what made her say that. She considered for a moment and said, Thonglor is very beautiful, and a little loud. Ekkamai is also beautiful, and a little quieter, and the people who live there have been here longer. I said, Thank you. I went to Ekkamai the following Saturday. I was at a coffee place by 9:15, in a conversation with a retired British architect and an American ex-academic by 10. And by noon I understood that the woman in Thonglor had been describing exactly the distinction I had failed to research. I want to give you a specific beat from month 2 that made the wrong district understanding arrive all at once. A Thai woman of perhaps 50 at the coffee place asked me in the second month whether I was new. I said I had been here 2 months. She said she had thought so because I looked like I was working too hard, which was accurate. She asked what I was working on. I explained the software project. She said it sounded interesting, and then she said, Are you happy here? I said yes. In Thonglor? Yes. And she said, You should go look at Ekkamai. I asked why. She gave me the description of beautiful and loud versus beautiful and quieter and longer settled, returned to her book, and I returned to the software. For the rest of the afternoon I thought about it. The following Saturday I went to Ekkamai. By Sunday I understood. The understanding did not produce any action, because I had a lease with a 2-month deposit and a 2-month early termination penalty, and I had done the calculation and decided to finish the 12 months. But the understanding was complete, and the remaining 10 months of Thonglor were the months of a man who knows where he should be and who cannot be there yet, which is a specific and instructive discomfort. I need to tell you about the lease, because the lease is the mechanism, and the mechanism is instructive for men who have not yet signed one. A Bangkok condominium lease of 12 months is a legal contract between you and the landlord. It is typically governed by Thai civil law and the landlord's particular terms, and the terms I had signed included a standard clause that I want to describe precisely because the description is important. 2 months' rent as a security deposit, forfeitable upon early termination by the tenant, plus a penalty equal to 2 months' rent for early termination. This means that if I ended the lease in month 6, I would forfeit the deposit of 76,000 baht and pay an additional 76,000 in penalty, for a total of 152,000 baht, to exit a lease I had been in for 6 months. At that point, I had also paid 6 months of rent at 38,000, which is 228,000 baht. Total cost of the 6-month Thonglor experience, if I exited at month 6, 380,000 baht. I ran this calculation in month 3. I stayed the 12 months. The total cost of the Thonglor year at 38,000 per month, plus the deposit, returned, minus 3,000 for minor repairs that I am certain were inflated, was 453,000 baht. In US dollars at the prevailing rates, approximately 12,500. The equivalent year in Ekkamai would have been somewhere between 264 and 312,000 baht, call it 290,000, plus deposit. Difference, approximately 160,000 baht, which is roughly $4,300, which is the cost of the yellow highlighter. In month 7 I began exploring Ekkamai seriously, not to move immediately but to prepare for month 13. Let me give you months 4 through 6, because they are the months in which a man transitions from the discovery phase of a new city into the actual life of the city, and the transition is where you find out whether the place you are in is the place you need to be. Month 4. I had established my Thonglor routine. 3 restaurants, the coffee place, the BTS to wherever else in Bangkok I needed to go, and the evenings in the apartment reading or working on the personal project I had been deferring for a decade, which was a piece of software I had been meaning to write since 2017 and that I finally had time for. The software project was going well. The Thonglor social life was not going at all, which I want to be precise about. Not that it was bad, but that it was absent. I am not an introvert in the clinical sense, but I am a man who builds social connections through sustained proximity to people who share his interests and his pace, and Thonglor was not generating sustained proximity to those people. The proximity it was generating was to people who were excellent at their jobs, excellent baristas, excellent restaurant staff, excellent gym trainers in the building, and who were not going to become my community because they were not looking for an older American tech retiree as a fixture in their professional ecosystem. Month 5. I joined a coding meetup in the Sathorn area, which produced 2 useful technical conversations and no ongoing friendships, because the meetup was largely attended by young Thai developers at an early career stage, and the intersection of my experience and their experience is professionally interesting and socially limited. Month 6. I started going to a Saturday morning market near the apartment, and the market was good, and I was there for 2 hours and came home with mangoes, and I did not speak to anyone, and in the afternoon I sat on the balcony looking at Thonglor and thinking, I have selected a place that is correct for someone. Month 7, I began exploring Ekkamai seriously, not to move immediately but to prepare for month 13. A 1-bedroom apartment at 24,000 baht a month, with a BTS walk of 11 minutes, or a motorbike taxi ride of 3 minutes, and a communal rooftop that the building's long-term residents used on weekend evenings, with a practice of gentle informality that I recognized immediately as the social environment the 47 videos had failed to show me, because gentle informality does not produce compelling YouTube content. The building manager was a Thai woman of 60 who spoke serviceable English and who told me, when I explained my situation, that she would hold the unit for me until month 12 of my current lease. She was as good as her word. I moved in on the 1st of December 2023. I want to describe the difference between the 2 apartments accurately and without sentimentality, because they are 2,400 meters and approximately 14,000 baht a month apart, and the difference is not romantic, it is practical. Let me give you the Ekkamai rooftop in more detail, because the rooftop is the whole argument for the place. It is not a spectacular rooftop. It has 4 plastic tables, some potted plants that the building manager maintains, a view of the canal and the trees beyond it, and a fan that works on 2 settings. On weekday evenings it is usually empty or has 1 or 2 residents reading. On weekend evenings, from about 6 onward, it has a core group of 5 or 6 people who have been in the building long enough to have the unspoken ease of people who share a kitchen in a shared house. Duncan, the Scottish surgeon, is the anchor of the group. He has been in the building for 4 years. He knows everything about Bangkok's private hospital system and a great deal about everything else. And he has the specific social gift of making new people feel like they have always been in the conversation. The American woman, whose name is Helen but who prefers to be called Hel, spent 19 years working in Phnom Penh and arrived in Bangkok in 2021 with an understanding of Southeast Asian city life that is the product of 2 decades of actually living it, and she is the person I ask when I want to know how something actually works rather than how it is supposed to work. The Dutch couple, Jan and Iris, built an e-commerce business that they run entirely online and that allows them to live wherever they want, and they have chosen Bangkok with the considered preference of people who have examined the alternatives rather than the enthusiastic preference of people who watched 47 videos. These are my people. I was 12 minutes from them for 12 months, and I did not know they existed. I want to describe the difference between the 2 apartments accurately and without sentimentality. The Ekkamai apartment has a better view, which is of a canal with trees on its far bank that changes color in the morning light, in a way I did not anticipate when I rented it, and that I have now been looking at for 14 months, and that I find, with the eye of someone who has spent his career staring at screens, excellent. The Thonglor building had a swimming pool I used twice. The Ekkamai building has a rooftop I use 2 or 3 evenings a week, and on those evenings there is a retired Scottish surgeon named Duncan, and an American woman who spent 20 years in non-profit work in Cambodia, and a Dutch couple who run an online business, and who have been in Bangkok for 7 years, and who know everything about Bangkok that you need to know if you are willing to ask them, and I am willing to ask them, and this is what I did not find in Thonglor, because Thonglor's rooftop has a gym and a pool and no one sitting in the evenings talking, because the Thonglor resident demographic goes out at 10, not home at 9:30. Now the practical accounting, because this is a channel that values numbers, and I have been giving you context, and I should give you the number. I want to add something about what Bangkok actually is, separately from what YouTube says it is, because the correction of the methodology requires a corrected output. Bangkok is not one place. Every person who has been here more than a year will tell you this, and it sounds like a cliché until you have lived it, and then it sounds like the most important thing anyone has told you. Bangkok is 30 different cities occupying the same geography, and the specific city you inhabit is determined by where you live and how you move and what you need at what hours. And the determination is not made by the YouTube consensus, because the YouTube consensus is about the cities that produce interesting content, and interesting content is produced by the places that are visually and gastronomically and experientially elevated, and the elevated places are frequently not the places that are correct for sustained inhabitation. Thonglor produces interesting content. Ekkamai produces interesting lives. These are not the same thing, and the 47 videos were all about the former, and I needed the latter, and I learned the difference at a cost of approximately $4,500 and 12 months of building social connections in the wrong place. The 12 months were not wasted. I know Thonglor well now. I eat there occasionally. I have relationships with the staff at 3 of the restaurants and 2 of the coffee places, and the knowledge of Thonglor is a form of Bangkok knowledge that I would not have without the year. But the year was 12 months of learning a city I was not going to live in, and the efficient sequence would have been 3 months of serviced accommodation, followed by a lease in Ekkamai, and the efficient sequence would have cost approximately the same or less, and it would have given me 3 months of the whole city before committing to one part of it. Now the practical accounting, because this is a channel that values numbers, and I have been giving you context, and I should give you the number. The Thonglor year cost me approximately $12,500 in rent, against an equivalent Ekkamai year of approximately $8,000. The difference, $4,500, is the direct cost of the wrong district decision. Added to that, the cost of the first month's orientation period, during which I bought things at the Thonglor convenience prices because I did not yet know where the markets were, approximately an additional $300 above what I would have spent in a more locally embedded neighborhood. And the opportunity cost, this is harder to quantity, of 12 months of building social connections in the wrong place, because the contacts I developed in Thonglor were primarily restaurant staff, delivery people, and the coffee place woman who told me to go to Ekkamai, none of whom became friends. The social infrastructure of a new city takes a year to build, and I spent my year building it in the wrong place, and starting again in December 2023. I am 14 months into the Ekkamai year, and the social infrastructure now exists and is good, and the rooftop is excellent, and the canal is the color it is in the mornings, and the cost of the correct life was the incorrect year, and the incorrect year was a consequence of signing a 12-month lease on day 3, in a place I had chosen using 47 YouTube videos and a yellow highlighter. What I would do differently, and this is the section I want men to hear. Do not sign anything for the first 3 months. Let me be specific about what the 3 months looks like, because don't sign is advice that everyone gives, and the gap between the advice and the implementation is how you end up on day 3 with a pen in your hand. Bangkok has an abundant supply of furnished monthly apartments and serviced residences that rent month to month at rates between 25 and 55,000 baht, depending on location and specification. This is more per month than an annual lease in the same building, but it is less expensive than a wrong annual lease in the wrong building, and the calculation is not close. The wrong annual lease cost me $4,500 more than the right one would have, and the 3 months of monthly accommodation costs perhaps a premium of $6,000 to $10,000 over what 3 months of the right annual lease would have cost. and the premium is the price of the information that allows you to find the right annual lease. In software terms, this is spending on tests before you ship to production. The test environment costs money. It costs less than the production failure. The 3 months also gives you the community research that the 47 videos cannot provide, because the community research requires you to be in the neighborhood at different times of day and different days of the week and in different social configurations, and you cannot do that from YouTube. The coffee place woman who told me to go to Ekkamai told me in month 2. If I had been in serviced accommodation in month 2, I would have moved to Ekkamai in month 4. Instead, I moved in month 13. The difference is 9 months of living in the wrong place, and 9 months in Bangkok at 63 is not an abstract number. It is 9 months of the specifically good mornings and the social infrastructure and the canal, and I did not have those 9 months, and I am not getting them back, and they cost $4,500 to not have, which is the number I keep when I think about the highlighter. What I would do differently, and this is the section I want men to hear. Do not sign anything for the first 3 months. This advice is available on every expat forum in Bangkok, and I had read it, and I signed the lease on day 3. I want to be specific about why I signed on day 3 despite having read the advice, because this is the gap between knowing and doing that the recording should address. I signed on day 3 because the apartment was available and the price was within my budget and the neighborhood was on my map in yellow and the research said this was the right place, and I was afraid that if I did not sign immediately, the apartment would go to someone else, which was a real risk and which I was right to be concerned about in the narrow sense. The apartment was in demand. If I had waited a week, it might not have been available. This is true. What is also true is that if I had waited a week and the apartment had gone, and I had spent 3 months in a serviced residence and moved to Ekkamai in February, I would have found 24,000 baht equivalents available, because Ekkamai has more supply and lower velocity than Thonglor, and the inventory would have been there. The fear of missing out on the right apartment was the fear of missing out on the wrong apartment, and the distinction was not visible to me on day 3, and the not being visible on day 3 is what the 3 months is for. The specific advice is this: arrive. Spend the first week doing nothing except walking every neighborhood you are considering, at morning pace and evening pace, on a weekday and a weekend. Note where you naturally go for coffee, and where you naturally go for food, and what kind of people you encounter doing those things. Eat once, slowly, at a restaurant in each neighborhood, and pay attention to who is also eating there. Find the rooftop or the park or the canal equivalent in each neighborhood, and spend 20 minutes in it in the evening. Then, on the basis of this walking and these observations, email or message 3 people who are similar to you and who have been living in Bangkok for 2 or more years, and ask them, given what you know about me, where should I live? Weight their answers above everything else. Then spend 2 more months in a serviced apartment near the top of your list before committing to a year. The 3 months cost somewhere between 80,000 and 150,000 baht in total, depending on specifications, and it saves you approximately the same amount in the wrong lease premium, plus 9 months of living in a city that is not shaped for your life. It is the best 80,000 baht you will spend in Bangkok, and it feels like a delay, and it is an investment, and the investment is in not being me, in month 4 of the Thonglor year, sitting on a balcony in a neighborhood that is correct for someone, trying to identify whose. What I would do differently, and this is the section I want men to hear: do not sign anything for the first 3 months. The advice is correct. A monthly serviced apartment for 3 months. In Bangkok, you can find these for 30 to 45,000 baht a month. More than an annual lease, but far less than the combined cost of the wrong district year. Gives you the time to walk every neighborhood, to have the coffee place conversations, to discover that the place described as desirable in the YouTube ecosystem and the place that is correct for you are different places, and to sign the annual lease from a position of informed preference rather than from a position of research-based certainty that turns out to have been research-based ignorance. I spent $4,500 learning that I was researching the wrong question. The right question is not, which neighborhood do the YouTube videos describe as desirable? The right question is, which neighborhood will I actually inhabit, at the pace I actually move, and the hours I actually keep, and the community I actually belong to? That question cannot be answered by 47 videos. It can only be answered by 3 months of being in the city. And the 3 months cost less than the wrong lease. And the wrong lease is waiting for you in every desirable neighborhood in every city in Thailand if you arrive with a highlighter and a certainty you have not earned. The canal at 7 in the morning is green in a particular way. Let me tell you what a correct Bangkok day actually looks like now, because the recording has been largely about the incorrect year, and I want to end with the correct one. I wake between 6 and 6:30. I make coffee in the apartment. I have a pour-over setup that I brought from Seattle, and that produces, in Ekkamai, a cup that is better than anything I can buy nearby, which is the specific coffee achievement of a person who has stopped trying to find the best coffee in the neighborhood and started making it himself. I go to the canal. The canal is 7 minutes on foot from the apartment, along a sword that runs between shophouses selling tools and groceries, and things I have not yet identified, and the canal itself is not beautiful in the way that a nature photograph is beautiful. It is an urban waterway, with concrete banks, and some rubbish, and the morning fishermen who are always there, and who I have never spoken to, and who I nod to every morning. The light on it in the morning is the light that I have described, and that I am not going to try again. At 8 or 8:30, I go to the coffee place on Soi 12, which is a small place run by a couple who have been there since 2019 and who know my order, and with whom I have, over 14 months, developed the specific ease of people who see each other regularly and who have found the distance that makes the seeing pleasant. I work on the software project in the mornings if I want to. I read if I want to. I meet Duncan or Hel or Jan and Iris on whatever weekend evening happens to align. Bangkok is very accessible from Ekkamai in every direction, and I go into the city when I want what the city has, and I come back when I want what Ekkamai has, and the architecture of this is simple and sustainable, and I did not find it by watching YouTube. I found it by being in Bangkok for 14 months, and letting the place tell me what it was, and the telling took 2 addresses and $4,500, and I would have paid more, and I wish I had paid less, and I am here now. And the canal is green, and the coffee is good, and Duncan is on the rooftop on Saturday evenings, and this is the life I came here for, and I have it. The software will ship in March, the canal will still be green, the 47 videos will be deleted. These are the things that are true, and they are all I need, and the canal doesn't need a YouTube video, and neither, it turns out, do I. The canal at 7 in the morning is green in a particular way. I have been looking at it for 14 months, and I am still interested in it. Not whether they are described as desirable, but whether I am still interested in them after 14 months. The rooftop is good. Duncan is good. The Dutch couple are good. The coffee place on Soi 12 is where I go at 8, and the woman there knows my order, and I know hers, which is an information exchange I value more than any data set I gathered before I arrived. And I have been in tech long enough to know the difference between data you collected and knowledge you earned. And in Bangkok, those are as different as they are in a code base, and they take approximately the same amount of time to build from scratch, and you cannot shortcut either one by watching 47 videos and selecting a color for your highlighter. I want to end with something I have not said yet, which is what the correct life in Bangkok has produced that I did not expect to produce. I expected, when I moved here, a quieter version of the life I had in Seattle. What I have is a different kind of life altogether. And the difference is not about Bangkok specifically. It is about what happens when you remove the thing that was organizing your time for 31 years and you do not immediately replace it with another organizing structure. And Bangkok was the place where I found out what I actually wanted to do with the time. The software project is nearly complete. It does not have a commercial purpose. It is a thing I wanted to build because I had been thinking about its architecture since 2017, and I never had the uninterrupted cognitive space to build it. And Bangkok gave me the space, and the Ekkamai flat gave me the canal, and the morning coffee, and the specific unhurried quality of days that have structure but are not producing anything except the living of them. I go to the rooftop. I talk to Duncan about Bangkok's hospital system, and about Scotland, and about the specific kind of man who ends up sitting on a plastic chair on a building rooftop in Ekkamai at 67, having spent 30 years cutting people open to save their lives. And the answer is the same kind of man who sits across from him, having spent 31 years building distributed systems, which is a man who did his work and retired correctly, and found his way, eventually, to the right neighborhood, and the finding took longer than it should have, and cost more than it needed to, but it was not very long in the scheme of a retirement, and the cost was within the range of what an education costs. And the education is done, and who is not going back to Seattle, and who is still interested in the canal after 14 months, and who selected yellow for the wrong district, and found the right one anyway, and who has 47 YouTube videos bookmarked in a folder called Bangkok Research, that he has not opened since November 2022, and which he is going to delete now, because the research is complete.